Welcome everyone back to Pommy and Oz, and as usual, we have a guy that's as regular on the channel as me, Big Paolo. How are you doing?
I'm very well, Pommy, mate. You know, I love doing these previews and tactical analysis with you. And what a game to do it for, just quietly. My golly.
Well, I mean, we're really on the event horizon, aren't we? Because I know you probably haven't. I don't think I have. I don't think Terry has. We've never done one of these for a final.
No.
And this is the one game that's in the way of that. Because usually at this stage, I'm saying, this is my last preview. I'll be back next week. We'll do some trade analysis. It's quite exciting that we are one game away from finals.
I know. And it's quite exciting that the game with which we have to, well, pencil in and win. I mean, we have to win every game. Obviously, we have to go in trying to win every game. But it just happens to be against the arch nemesis, a team who we hate a lot and hate so much. And it's steeped in history, this game. And, you know, for all the actual football talk that you and I are going to do upon this, let's not also forget the historical significance and the significance that this particular game has in the AFL fixture.
Mate, long line of history, that 1910 granny. Do you know what I mean? Suspensions, and I talked about it earlier in the week as well. 2 18-month suspensions in that fight and 3 12-month. And think it's 1910 where legally you were allowed to kill a man to get a ball. To get 18 months, just imagine how big that fight was.
To think now that, like, for a footballing act like Cripper would initially get 2 weeks, could you imagine what they had to have done to warrant 18 weeks back then? Or 18 months back then?
Mate, in my mind, it must have been like the Battle of the Somme. Like there's mortar shells going off, horses everywhere. Like, it must have been one hell of a fight. I don't think anyone's around who really saw that. So
no.
Obviously, it's probably folklore now.
But it's interesting too, like if we look back through history, these teams have met in 6 VFL grand finals, and Carlton have won 5. Collingwood have only won the 1, which was all the way back in 1910, which was when bread was first being cut and thought of as a main course. and then since then, we've won the next 5. So it's been a long time. Actually, I think this is probably... And we were talking about this on the Jumper Punch. This is probably the first time Carlton and Collingwood have played in a huge game of significance. Not that they're not all significant, but we're talking as in like direct results on a season for, I think, since 1988 from memory is the last time Carlton and Collingwood played in an actual final. So this last game is pretty much going to be that 90,000 fans at the ground. And, you know, as I said, for you and I, all the analysis and all the analytical work that we do with regards to our football club and the games that we go through, I still love, and this is what you and I are just huge. The sentimental side of it is just so. That's what we go to the footy for. That's what we do. That's what we love.
There's something about rivalries. I mean, the stats kind of get put aside, don't they, in a rivalry? Because form doesn't matter, and that's in any sport. Do you know what I mean? If you look at Real Madrid, Barcelona, it doesn't matter who's better. On a derby day, it's a bit different, isn't it? No one wants to play fluid football. It becomes more of an emotive thing. And this game here, like you say, top 4 for them on the line, top 8 for us on the line. Really, it's going to be that ultimate bragging right, because it doesn't matter what happens from now to finals. You can always hold that over your opposition for the rest of the year.
Yeah, it's huge. It's massive as well. And you also look at the win or the head-to-head ledger between both clubs. Collingwood have edged ahead by 1 after their win earlier this year, and now it's our turn to even the ledger back up and potentially, maybe if things fall into place, maybe go ahead in the ledger if we meet in finals.
Mate, it's huge, and that's why we've called it Something's Got to Give. Something's got to give, because I think what is beautiful as well, the symmetry keeps happening. Carlton started the season hot. When we met them round 11, we were in forms of our lives. They were kind of winning, losing. It was kind of 50-50. And then the season flips and Carlton are going 50%. and Collingwood are flying. And it's quite interesting that last week there was chinks in Collingwood's armour and Carlton returned to what we knew, that brand. So everything is kind of, it's almost a script. Paolo's niche word this week has been script to me. I'll admit, it's a script.
Well, I mean, you look at it and as I said, you can look at it from a sentimental and story point of view, from a newsworthy point of view. And, we've had how many opportunities have we had to lock in this final spot? 3. Adelaide, Brisbane, Melbourne. We've lost all 3. And somehow, some way, the final game of the year is against our biggest arch nemesis in front of a huge crowd for us to book in finals. It's poetic, isn't it? It's poetic.
Mate, it's poetic. And obviously, in credit to Collingwood here, because they were predicted to finish bottom 2 by most of the media. So they've had a wonderful season. Many people had Carlton missing the 8-12. So both have probably fought above their ledger. And for the AFL, they must be rubbing their hands, because I reckon they saw this fixture and thought, it'll be 2 shit kickers finishing the season, but we'll get a bit of money because both their fans are mental. And for the AFL, this is the hugest game of the week, isn't it? Because it's got everything you want.
Well, to continue on with this as well, I think it is, you would argue to say it is one of, if not the biggest home and away games in the last 10 to 15 years, I would say. That might be a little bit of recency bias, but I mean, depends how long you branch out recency bias for with your time frame. But for me personally, I cannot remember a game that has so much bearing on the season between 2 of the biggest clubs in the land. And it is just going to be, to use a cliche that's used in articles, it is legitimately going to be a blockbuster. And I don't think I've ever been more excited for a home and away game in my life, to be honest. And I'm 28 years old. I've sort of seen the horrible times with this football club and seen a glimmer of hope with finals. That Richmond game that we played in 2013 was enormous. But it was a false dawn. And, now we get the chance to hopefully make sure that this light at the end of the tunnel is not another train coming to hit us. Hopefully it's the walk into paradise.
Mate, that's it. And they are basically they'll go in there, won't they, to use a cliche, on the shoulders of the Giants before. This is the chance, really, for both sides as well, so much.
Yeah.
A potential to open up the 80s again, the 70s, where these 2 sides were the dominant sides in the league.
Yeah, exactly right. And I mean, this is what Aussie Rules is all about. And I think this is what sport is all about. And I think it's, and I know I harp on about this. Jacob Wiedering is one of my most loved players. I absolutely adore him as a footballer, and he's just a brilliant defender. But a part of me last year when he sort of said, the rivalry doesn't mean as much to us as it might have in the past, and that just it hurt me a little bit. You know what I mean? Because as fans, we look at this game and we think like this is nothing but blood. Like you just see red in these games, and it just means so much. Like it, makes or break you. It can make or break your weekend, basically. And that's not to say that the players don't feel it either way if they win or lose. But I think there's just that little bit of added, whether it's 1% or 0.5% that you get from when you look at that opposition, and opposition analysis this weekend is against Collingwood. You should just take a little step back, and the hair on your wrist should just spring up a little bit. The hair on the back of your neck should just spike up a little bit. And, I think I would assume, and I know Vossi, the first thing he did when he came in there, he sort of spoke about the history of the club. And I remember he had, I think, the book or History of Carlton or something like that. So I'm hoping that's been embedded in these boys throughout the year, and hopefully we can see it on Sunday.
Mate, and I think you will. And I think what really excites me as we get into a bit of tactical is how these players play. Collingwood are very similar to Carlton in manic pressure, but their ball movement totally different to Carlton. They don't look at ball retention. It's manic. It's chaos. It's chaos ball. Where Carlton, they play well when they do lay them foundations of them heavy pressure, which we saw last week, but they're very ball retentive. If this was a boxing fight, you wouldn't ask for 2 better contenders, because it is literally styles make fights. On paper, this could be a bloodbath as well, because both enjoy that pressure, both enjoy that physical aspect of the game.
Yeah, I think too, if you sort of define Collingwood's ball movement as chaotic, and I don't think it was none more so than its win against Melbourne a fortnight ago, where every passage of play was just manic, end to end, bodies crashing everywhere, ball staying alive as well. Whereas us, and as you mentioned, and we continue to mention throughout the year, our disposal count is so high. It's amongst the highest in the competition, and that's all part of, as you said, the ball retention strategy with which Michael Voss has implemented this year too. And we've seen that become part of our defence as well, Pommy, which is, the opposition can't score when you've got the ball, clearly. But alternatively as well is that we need to just continue to find ways that when we are in full-on ball retention mode with regards to defensive ball movement, with our ball movement, when we do have it, is freeing up options to be able to score with. And I think that is, and you and I have continued to say that when we go into settle down mode with ball in hand, trying to find those extra avenues to goal is something that we've just struggled with a little bit. But I think that's just the next layer on top of what Michael Voss has implemented this year. So, look, all game plans eventually get found out, don't they? And it's all about adding layers to, and you say too, like, no coach has a plan B or C. Like, it's just you have the fundamental way with which you play football. At the moment for us, it's ball retention, being hard at the contest, winning the ball at the source. But then you've got to add to your plan A, A1, A2, A3, A4, A5. And that's what the best coaches do. They've got layers around the nucleus of the foundation with which they set up to win. And look, it's been a work in progress this season. We've clearly improved on the field. And now it's just about implementing it against Collingwood. If you look back to last time we played them, I think Collingwood exposed us with their width, which was really interesting, because I thought coming into that game, that was going to be a real strength of ours. But what Collingwood were able to do, they were able to make it manic and keep the ball alive. And as a result, and you always say it, it's the Pep vacuum, the vacuum where you just get sucked into the contest, and players that have of the experience, heads like Steele Sidebottom, just too smart, Pommy. Stay out, stay out, stay out. The ball's going to eventually get out, and I'm the free man, and he killed us. So we need to be aware of that coming into Sunday.
It is, and it's quite interesting because you would say about this time of year when we played them last time was where we started to see little chinks in Carlton's armour, which we maybe ignored prior because we were 8-2. So there was them little chinks, and that was one of them, like you say. Our ability to spread just died, and it became a real focus on staying centrally from the side, which side bottom, even Dacos enjoyed. They enjoyed that width. They got us in 60 pressure acts more they had as well. It was the first time we'd really seen a side outfight us as well, which is what we'd prided ourselves on. And it's interesting, last week, we saw the return of the zonal wing defence, which I remember doing the preview for the Sydney game and getting excited about how TDK and Noons worked one side to really stop the ball movement. As opposed to playing a tag, they literally set little traps on the wing. And we saw that last week in full extent from Carlton with Ed Langdon and Bailey Fritsch. They really made Noons be that extra there and really put some focus on that channel, which backfired in a way because Melksham suddenly came to the fore. But the two danger men before that game were taken out of the contest.
Yeah, and I think when you look back to that contest as well, I think if you weren't doing that and your focus was then put on Melksham, you would have been battered because Langdon and Jordan just would have got a hold of you. So you've got to, it's, the great phrase is, which poison are you going to take? Because a team like Melbourne's going to get you somewhere. It's just whether or not, and I love to use that phrase, you've got to be able to mitigate the damage and you've got to be able to mitigate the strongest area of your opposition. So, look, for me, coming into this weekend, I think for us, and we need to, it's easy to say, we need to just be able to be cool and composed when Collingwood are bringing that pressure and just get a mark, because I think people underestimate that short little uncontested mark that you can get with a 20-metre kick that just slows the play down. And because Collingwood are so manic with their pressure and they're trying to hunt the ball carrier, you're going to be able to find space out the back and isolate your forwards one-on-one and even get those out numbers as well. Your 3-on-2s in your advantage, your 4-on-3s in your advantage. And then that can create overlap run, which is where I think we broke down a little bit against Collingwood earlier in the season. And we always say it too, like our ball movement can sometimes be a little bit too safe. And I think Geelong played us perfectly. I think they were the team who really systematically broke us down within the last sort of month where, and you said it too, and I think most people noticed when they went back to the replay, just completely cut off all our short options. And that's all to do with work rate as well. So, the boys need to be on song with their work rate and pressure. And I think what we saw against Melbourne with regards to work rate, pressure, bringing the heat to the contest, finding short targets too, was a switch in the right direction from what we dished up in the last fortnight. And now you've got a nice little base to set yourself up with to hit this Sunday.
Mate, spot on. And that is going to be the key, I think. The pressure, the ability to handle pressure. Obviously, like Collingwood, we talked manic ball movement. 4th in the comp for clangers. So you're going to get opportunities. And it's interesting, number 2 in the comp for unforced errors. So it's going to be interesting for Carlton this week that the method that Sydney deployed, which is very interesting, was they didn't have to hurry the opposition. We saw Geelong, they hurried Carlton. That was their plan. Get close, make them get rid of it. Sydney, they knew that these opportunities were going to come up, so they were very strong when the ball hit the deck. And that is where Collingwood are very clever. They may not take the marks, but they're very hungry around the ball. And Sydney really put a focus on, what we're going to do? We're going to make sure we get there. Because they're not a mark inside. And that is what we do. We do mark. They don't. So it's going to be interesting this week, particularly both sides play out the back. We know Quaynor and Dacos swing round there with Pendlebury. We've got Sard, Doc, and Co who like to use the ball. Big battle between Bo McCreary and Matty Owens. We've got the stats on the screen for you.
Get him up. Oh, we got to miss the pom. They're up.
Yeah. So these are going to be really interesting, because at the start of the week, McRae mentioned Bo about how he celebrates a tackle like it's a goal. And he's a very catalyst of what they're about. They put a lot of focus inside 50. Pressure. Carlton and Collingwood, very similar inside 50 tackles. And it's something you and me talk about. You kind of know if Carlton are going to win or not based on their inside 50 tackles.
It's such a big barometer for us, isn't it? And these two teams are ranked in the top 5 for inside 50 tackles. I think Collingwood may have edged ahead of us by a minuscule amount, but I think for us, it's arguably one of, if not our key barometers, and it was one that we continued to bring up in our PPI series before the season started. And I think what Matt always brings is those tackle counts and tackle numbers inside forward 50. He was, before he got injured with that calf, he was ranked, I think he was ranked average top 3 for tackles inside 50 or around about that. And I mean, I don't know how many times we have to say it, but that is what coaches and recruiters and scouts look for in small forwards. It's not just, you're a forward, you've got to kick goals. Obviously, I understand that. But for me, and I think for you as well, it's about generating shots as well and generating the chance to get shots on goal, locking the ball inside your forward hub. There's more to it than just kicking goals, period. If your small forward kicks 2 a game, but is conceding and allowing the opposition to have 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 rebound 50s because he can't put that pressure on, and you're conceding 5, 6, 7, 8 goals because of it. Well, it just, the cost outweighs the benefit, doesn't it? So I think what Matt always is he's a very undervalued commodity within our football team. And there's a reason he gets picked every week, Pommy, is because he can bring that tackle pressure inside forward 50. And we know he's also, he does have a keen eye for goal too, and he's a nice set shot too. So look, and he does put the blocks on as well. So for me, the reason I see the hate coming for him is because he's not kicking 4 or 5 goals a game, which small forwards just don't do anyway. I mean, how many small forwards do you see leading the Coleman every year? None.
Mate, I couldn't agree more. And the big argument with Collingwood this year has been Jamie Elliott and Bo McCreary are their leading tackles inside 50.
Yep.
And it's funny, always he's just behind Jamie Elliott in tackles inside 50. But if you actually combine their tackles and goals as average, Jamie Elliott and Bo McCreary, who were 2 key inside 50 tacklers for them, both inside the top 10. Motlop has just gone into the top 10 average tackles inside 50 with Owens. And you combine their stats as a team, they're actually bang equal for goals a game and tackles.
Yeah. And how highly do Collingwood, or does Collingwood rate, McCreary and Elliott? And we've got Matt Owens, who people want to trade and get rid of and drop. So just when you're saying, you've got to drop them, just be wary that there is a lot more that goes into it than just kicking goals with regards to that small forward role. So, and you and I, we're here to try to educate with regards to what our coaches and what coaches in the AFL are looking for with regards to these small forwards. And just the pressure indicators and tackles inside 50 are a massive part of it. And for us, and you said it too, and we continue to harp on about it, it's one of our biggest barometers. When that is on, when tackles inside 50 are on, we are on as a team. And you saw it, I think our best game of the year was against Fremantle, when our tackle inside 50 count got to, I think it was like the 16 or 17 within the first half. And you saw how we were able to systematically break down Fremantle as a football club. Granted, I don't think they're an amazing team. They're a pretty solid team, very hard to break down. But I think alternatively and conversely, you also have to look at, if the marks inside 50 are also skyrocketing, then your chance to make those tackles is obviously down as well, because, Curnow and Mackay are not bringing the ball to ground. They're actually marking the darn thing. But I think from that perspective, and you can tell when the heat's on, Pommy, you can see the eye test is always there as well. But, just look at those numbers before you go in and judge and say, you've got to drop him, because you drop a guy like Owens, your forward pressure is going to go down, and rebound 50 from opposition is just going to skyrocket as well.
Mate, spot on. And if you look at what Pies do well, this is what Carlton, you saw last week, why that kind of is negated. And you look at all the top teams that prioritise this. Melbourne do, Richmond's dynasty, Hawthorn's dynasty was all inside 50s. They always have the other guy to score goals.
Yes.
And this week we saw the importance of Jack Martin. Because when Jack Martin can bob up with them 2 goals, 3 goals, 4 goals, that is what rewards Motlop and Owens for their hard work. Because Martin isn't there for his tackles inside 50. We need Martin there to do it. And coincidentally, when we played them last time, the big thing for Carlton was 4 of the goals were taken from short-term marks just outside of 50. So that is, again, where Martin comes in this week with JSOS to stop that, to really make sure we can get it deep enough to create them repeat stoppages.
That's exactly right. And Jack Martin is also, and as you saw on the weekend, he's a finisher as well, which is something that we need to continue to work on as a football club as well. And his game on the weekend, I know he probably owes us a few, just quietly.
He does.
And I reckon he knows that as well. But a guy like him, I think, and just looking at it from a fan perspective and our perspective, I think the most frustrating thing about him is that we know he is capable of those type of games. And I don't think he's ever going to be a player that you're going to see from quarter 1 to quarter 4 just completely dominate. He's not that type of player. But what he is an impact player. And as we saw on the weekend, his ability to bob, he kicked 3 goals in a row for us and, effectively handed the keys to the game. And he said, here you go, boys. Like, I've done my bit. Now it's up to you to finish it off. And obviously we weren't able to, but it's nice to see him back in form. And he just needs to keep his body right, and he's such an integral part. And I actually think he does bring, aside from like that Essendon game, he was a little bit off, but I actually do think that he brings, a lot of intensity around the contest when he needs to. And his aerial work, I think, is also quite strong as well. So he's got ability to read the play too. And, I understand the criticism, and, I think you and I and a lot of people have been, very critical of him, but it's based purely on we know what he can do. It's just about doing it for longer and staying out on the field. So he's a very integral role. And you mentioned Jack Silvani, one of the leading forwards or one of the leading half forwards for marks on the lead inside the forward half, which is it's a massive thing, Pommy. And what I loved about his game, just to get away from the half forward area, he went on the ball and his clearance numbers were huge on the weekend. So he's added another layer to the game.
Well, I mean, it's interesting because we'll go on to the midfield with that. That's a great little segue. We
always look after you, mate. Always look after you.
Look at that. He's good at this. He's done this before. But we did see the return of Doc on the ball. This was something that was heavily talked about by, I think, just about every coach that's ever coached Carlton with Doherty. It's been the curse. When they mention it, we lose him. So it was nice Voss just did it, didn't talk about it. But we talked last time we were together. We thought Kennedy, Hewitt, Walsh, and Cripps. It's beautiful,
Yes,
but it sometimes overuses that ball. And Doc, we criticised him a bit over the last couple of weeks because he loves that last-minute kick in pressure. And we saw kind of what Collingwood do. Collingwood have almost a very heavy rotation on the ball.
Yes.
Now Pendlebury's fucked off out of there. And they have horses for courses. And we saw it this week, the most rotations we've ever seen at Carlton. And Doc and JSOS, like you say, absolutely huge because when shit got struggled, they played Martin into the game. They played their small forwards into the game because they were like, right, let's have a territory battle. Get rid of it. We're set here to defend. Make something happen, create a stoppage for us. We're not going to mess about with it.
Yeah, it added a completely different dynamic to our midfield. And I think it also, and I think too, I think we looked a lot, I don't know, I'd like to see what the numbers are on this, but we looked a lot fresher throughout the game. And I also think the ability to be able to throw extra numbers through there and keep the rotations high as well, it does throw the opposition off a little bit because then they have to deal with something else. And then they have to deal with another player. They have to deal with another player who might have a completely different skill set to what they've faced in the first 15, 20, 30 minutes of the game. So, you look at Sam Doherty's centre bounce attendance there. He was up to 18, which I would think in his career, I would say that's probably the most centre bounce attendances he's ever had as an Aussie rules footballer. And we saw, his first half was it him sort of getting used to the heat around that contest. There were a few moments where he could have maybe taken an extra step or two or dished off a handball. But as the game wore on and it became more contested and in the clinches and people were sort of falling over each other, those clearing kicks into space, are going to serve you well. And it's ironic that, as he toiled away and the game went on, he just continued to get better and better. And one thing about him and one thing that we know is, and I think he's even said it himself, is that the longer the game goes on, he feels much more comfortable because his running ability is second to none at the footy club and within the AFL.
Mate, I couldn't agree more. And we did see usually Carlton have 2 or 3 guys 80% on the ball all the time. This week, we only had Cripps and Pitternet in them numbers, and that's including all the stoppages around the ground.
Yep.
Outside of that, it's almost like a flat line of 65% for Walsh, Satterfield, Doc. This time we started to see Fish and Cottrell pick up the numbers. It was a real different Carlton. And like you say, that fresh word, I enjoy that fresh word because sometimes they do look, it's a high maintenance game plan. People forget. Voss isn't asking them to go out there and tickle each other. He's asking them to throw their bodies on the line. And if you're using the same 3 guys, which genuinely you see Voss like to do, that is going to cause issues. But like this week, around the forward stoppages, you saw Durden, Stocker, interesting going into the forward stoppages. The back half, you started to see Mitch McGovern deployed on the ball for 5 defensive stoppages. Adam Sard going into midfield and wing stoppages. Voss really mixed it up this week. And that is, I would say, the big separation from Collingwood to us. The fact that they can keep their key men in shape for that fourth quarter push, for that fourth quarter when the game is on the line. And I think that's no surprise why you saw Carlton really manage to match it with Melbourne this week.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, sometimes when you're forced into it, it can often lead to moments like we saw on the weekend. And I think there was none other than Will Setterfield who really stood up in that inside midfield role. And one thing that we've continued to speak about this year is physicality and the ability to be able to take contact at the contest, which, you saw Will Setterfield, and we've mentioned this too, he's a solid lad. He's not slight or anything. He's quite tall for a midfielder too. And, he was able to really physically match it with Clayton Oliver. And look, he probably broke even with the battle on the weekend as well. And for me, I think he's a little bit lighter on his feet than what a guy like Kennedy is, if that makes sense. And I think his disposal, like Kennedy is a lovely kicker of the ball as well. But I think Setterfield's lightness on his feet just adds a different little bit of dynamic to our midfield with regards to speed with which the ball gets out from stoppage as well. And I thought we moved the ball a lot quicker away from stoppage too. We're a lot sharper and a lot more direct, which is something that you and I have been big on. And that's why we've been a big advocate for trying to get Zach Fisher through there, because we know he's got, he's fleet-footed, but he's also direct with his ball movement as well. And that helps isolate your forwards one-on-one because they're able to set up. Opposition defenses aren't able to get that defensive zone set in place. So I think these rotations have they been a blessing in disguise? I think they have, to be honest, with regards to what they've thrown in there. And we don't know if Williams and Chera do come back in, which we'll touch on. That's just going to add another shape to the midfield, because we know Williams can pinch hit through stoppages. We saw what he did against Collingwood in that preliminary, in that final years ago. And we know what Chera is capable of on the ball as well. He's been a little bit down last couple of weeks. But I think Setterfield and Doherty have just added something completely different to that midfield, which is going to serve us well, not just for this weekend, but in the long run too, I reckon. I reckon Setterfield's put a lifeline on his career.
Mate, I think I mean, the tag roll, we haven't seen a tag roll at Carlton probably since Jed Lamb. Like, like that feels like a lifetime ago when we were talking about Jed Lamb. But we haven't seen it. And it did give Jack Noons a role this week off halfback, which you would say maybe you touched on Zach Williams. Zach Williams may have watched that. And I think Zach Williams probably is rubbing his hands together, because I think that maybe says Zach Williams can come in as a player and play halfback 80-90% of the time. And Doc goes into the midfield and they rotate heavily around that, because suddenly you would say without Doc, there was no one really to take the game on by foot.
Yeah.
I think Zach Williams is a far superior kick to Sam Doherty. Yeah. I did watch that and think, you know what? If Zach Williams is fully fit, suddenly that back line is very formidable.
Yeah, exactly right. And I think the one thing that we noticed before Mr. Balenciaga did his ankle, did his calf against GWS, is that he was really starting to defend resolutely in his one-on-one battles. He had a real sort of toughness and edge to him. And I think I think it may have been the game against Adelaide and even against North Melbourne where he was really tight on his opponent too. And I think that aspect of the game as well, you're not doing those huge, those massive sprinting efforts that you need to do as a midfielder and on baller. Whereas, in the half-back role, you're not running as far as well. So I think that can also keep him fresh too. And I think you mentioned as well, him and Doherty potentially rotating through the midfield. I'd like to see it's going to be a risk, but you hopefully back your coaches in. But I wouldn't mind seeing Zach Williams pinch hit through the midfield against Collingwood, because I think you need to continue to add a different dynamic in there as well. Have your one wood and what you think you can rely on throughout the game, but then you've also got to change it up a bit.
Yeah, I think it'd be interesting because you were at training today. Did Chera look like he was ready?
I don't think so. He ran away from the main group and wasn't doing anything overly he wasn't really exerting from what I think, or from what he's probably capable of. There was no real gut bust, hard running. But again, I don't know. I don't know what the training loads are. Obviously, he's a test to play this weekend. The club said they expected him to train fully. But that adductor, that groin it's a nagging, niggling, just pain in the backside injury that you've got to be very careful with. And it needs to be fully right for him to be coming back into the side. I don't want them to be 70-30, 80-20, 90-10. It needs to be 99.9% certain that nothing is going to come up with this again. So do you play him? Honestly, I say no. I'd leave him out because I like what the midfield showed on the weekend. And I thought his downfall, I think, was taking contact, dishing the handball off, taking that risky kick inside. I think that had waned away from him in the last couple of weeks. So I think a little bit of time away just to freshen up, get your touch back, I don't think is the worst thing. I think he's part of our best team, but I'm happy with the mix that they put in there on the weekend to take us forward into Sunday and throughout the rest of the season. So Williams to come back in, touch and go as well. I don't know. I'm big on, and I think you and I are big on this too. I'm big on, if you have missed 12 weeks of football, to be thrown in after a serious calf injury, I'd be erring on the side of caution, to be honest. But he did move very freely at training. But again,
you did get me excited when I was texting
but
you.
the pressures are different, mate. Like the running patterns are different. Your exertion is completely different at AFL level. Like it's a completely different step up for it, mate. I could go out there and train with him at that intensity, mate. Like it's not, and it's all load management, and we know that. We know that.
He's got a good surname though. He's got a beautiful surname, Zaki. Like honestly, as the head of the Williams family, I can assure you he'll be fine. But I mean, I'm with you. I think we've got to go into this game knowing win it, which we will, final. And I would rather have Chera and Williams fit than win this and they're out for the year.
Question: can the team that faced up against Melbourne defeat Collingwood on the weekend? I say absolutely, categorically, yes.
2,000%. And I think the only change I would make potentially, and it's harsh, is that we know I love Noonsy.
Yeah.
I would take him out and play Zach Williams. That would be the only change that I could deem tolerable, and have Jack Noons as the sub.
Yeah. It would be a very, very attacking move based on the role that Nunes does play across that sort of halfback defensive wing area, because we know Zach Williams is, we know he likes to get forward and burst and kick through the ball as well and gain territory with his kicking. But it's a decision that they're going to have to weigh up. Do they say, well, okay, Collingwood have got these wingers, in Dacos and Sidebottom, and we can even see, you even see Jack Crisp float through that area too. Do we play a little bit defensive and try to sort of mitigate the damage like we did against Melbourne with their wingers, or do we just say, no, we need to go for it and let's put Zach Williams in, and whatever happens out the back on those wings, our back six just have to deal with it, or the back five that's left after Williams if he can't get back and play those defensive roles.
It's a tough one. I mean, I'm not all for fighting fire with fire. Like, I think, back yourself in. I think Williams is superior on the deck. That's where Jack Noons, I thought, came unstuck this week when he spilt a few marks, did him, under pressure. Yeah. And his groundwork, like, he might as well have just gone and bought a hot dog. I mean, and I love Noonsy. I'll support. I'm probably second in the Noons fan club behind his wife.
Yeah, like, third. I'm third, mate.
But I watched him and I was like, because I know Zach Williams' second efforts are good. And I'd like to see us hit them back, because obviously our weakness is their weakness. They commit a lot forward. Yeah. So we win it back. We can go over the top, bang, see you later. And that's where I think Zach Williams' strength is. He will take that kick on.
I think all the murmurs and all the talk and where there's smoke, there is fire, I think he will play. Just by what I saw at training today, all the talk in the media and the fact that they continue to say he's ready, I think he'll end up coming in. So I pray to God that they've put a decent amount of work, and that, mate, that's what you pay your high performance and strength and conditioning staff to do, to build the load up in these players. And I think too, and conversely to what I said prior, is that I'm not really sure about the exertion that you get at training. They would have simulated or tried to simulate what he would have done, in matches leading up into this round two. So, whether or not they'd have got anything out of him at VFL level, we don't know. But I think you also said, Pommy, if he's going to play, do you play him at VFL level and try to get him up? Or do you play Jack Nunes, who's probably not as talented and not as direct and not as clean, but we know he's fully fit? Or do you play a slightly underdone Williams, who is going to give you so much more with regards to his directness with ball movement, his ability to hit a target on that 45-degree kick and open up the play? This is why we pay Michael Voss six figures to get these decisions right.
Mate, I'm with you. It's a tough one because, I mean, I'm with you. I'd rather see Williams in, and with Chera,
Okay. Yeah.
I just think the abductor, it's one. I had an abductor and I only played very low level football in the UK. And anyone who watched me will vouch. I only ever went to the centre circle to chat.
Mm-hmm.
and I can remember I had a strain and played, and honestly, that walk to the centre circle just to give shit to a centre back he was trying to sit deep and give me the offside was a nightmare. So I wouldn't like to run around with it. Let's put it that way, and run 14 Ks.
Right. No, it's yeah. I mean, it's not. I think not. I wouldn't look. I said on Twitter. It might be negligent for him to come back into the team if he's a little bit niggly with that. And I don't want to see him doing a groin or doing an adductor during the game. And you're like, well, geez, what was the point of that? We knew that was the case. So keep him on ice for me. I think. Look, if you had to twist my arm and say you've got to pick one, Williams is the one.
Yeah, I also just have a fear that the only player he could come in for Setterfield, and we'll talk a bit about Setterfield. Last week, I thought, like you say, his work on Oliver, who is one of the best at what he does. And you can't really argue that. We love Cripps. Oliver is up there with Cripps with his numbers and his output. Yeah. And I thought Setterfield really did a job. And I think turned me on a little bit because I think you've got to pay sometime a bit of attention to what the opposition did. And I thought Setterfield was the perfect tag because he got a lot of the ball himself as well. He used it, but he really did negate the influence. And we know Collingwood. We know what they're like when they play. They're very regimented in that on ball. You've got side bottom, Lipinski, Pendlebury, Dacos. They all float through there with Crisp, as we know. They've even in recent weeks thrown Maynard up there when shit hits the fan. I think having someone who can tag, and I wouldn't trust Chera to tag. I think having that option this week, really, when you've got so many injuries, makes sense.
Yeah, and I think the beauty about Setterfield as well is that he can, and as we saw on the weekend, he was winning his own football too, and he was able to sort of gain territory for us as well, and his clearance numbers were quite strong too. So, as you said, that when we've said, I mean, was it more of a run with roll with Oliver, sort of getting up in his bill. It wasn't a pure lockdown, because Setterfield was able to, hurt them the other way as well. And I thought he broke even in that battle. So I think that might be a little area that Collingwood might just be. I'm not saying that they're soft. They're definitely a hardened midfield, but I don't think their midfield is known for their brute physicality, if that makes sense. And I think a man like Setterfield, who's big build, might be able to expose them at the contest with regards to that. And Setterfield, I think, and I know they've played him on a wing role throughout the season in VFL as well, which is, another string to his bow too. But I think that game we saw against Melbourne is the best of Setterfield, that inside midfield role. And that's what he was recruited as well. So he looked comfortable in that role. I wouldn't be taking him out of that role as well. But at least we know if we need to potentially rotate wings, we can get him on there as well.
It is something as well that Setterfield, that Voss likes. He likes to float Chera, Walsh on that wing. We've seen Doc go up to that wing earlier in the season. And that Setterfield kind of option allows that because it's like literally you've got that conveyor belt. Something GWS, when they got to the final, really did exploit with Whitfield, Kelly, Canelio. They floated players through their half-forward wings and on the ball to keep them fresh. I'm with you. And then we go to the best bit because obviously this man here, barring a miracle, will be like Mystic Pom called. He'd be the top goal kicker this year. Unless Hawkins goes mental, he's there. But obviously a big job because Harry, it was good to see him back in the goals. They do play Howe and Maynard in that taller position with Moore. So you're getting a kind of tall forward defender against them. So there is going to be a mismatch. Exciting times because that backline versus our backline, a lot of intercept power, a lot of score launch power, but also very good defenders above and below the deck.
Yeah, exactly. And I think for us as well, I think what is going to, and I think we were victim of it against Collingwood earlier in the year, was the long ball inside 50. And that's okay because, Harry and Charlie can compete in the air too. But when we didn't have Harry there earlier in the year, that I think that long ball inside 50 is pretty much null and void, isn't it? Now that we have Harry there alongside Charlie, those Collingwood defenders are now going to have to be accountable. It's not just going to be, okay, well, one takes Charlie and then there's two to float up and cut the long ball off. Now they've got to be where, oh, shit, Harry Mackay's there as well. Jack Martin, we know I know he's not, he's not known for that, but Jack Martin can take a mark as well. And, those two now are going to, as I said, hold Howe and more accountable as well. So Collingwood intercepted us superbly last time we played them. Now, let's see how you go with Harry Mackay in there alongside Charlie. Let's see.
It's going to be interesting because also a guy that destroyed us, Ollie Henry.
Yep.
Always be wary of a man with two first names, I always say. It's always a worry. He battered us last week, last time. Yep. And he was the kind of... That was where you really missed Mitch McGovern. I remember doing the review and saying you needed someone to peel off and take that ball. Yep. And we'd played with Plowman, God bless him. He cops a lot of shit, even though he's not playing. Yeah. He was kind of responsible for a lot of them. Did get lost in transition. Them dummy runs they make cause chaos. I'm excited. They're playing a different backline. Marchbank, McGovern, Wheater, and Young. These guys, two of them, always play loose and go for the intercept. Suddenly, Carlton can hurt them.
Exactly right. And this is what I've been so huge on. And this is where you need to compare apples to apples to, I understand that you're looking at the form from the last 3 weeks with us, but it's a completely different team that we're coming up against. And you look back to that earlier game against Collingwood, and I've been so huge on this. I know I've got, you and I have got, we're going to beat Collingwood, or, we're this, we're that, we're unbeatable. It's not, we try to make it fun and lighthearted too, but at the same time, you've got to look at it from a team point of view and a statistical point of view and an analytical point of view and a pure football point of view. And I look at this game and I think, well, the last time we played Collingwood, no Pitternet, no McGovern, no Marchbank, no Mackay, no Wiedering. I would vouch to say that those 5 blokes are pretty important just to the way you set up around the ground. So, look, I'm not saying we're unbeatable this weekend, but we're unbeatable this weekend with those 5 blokes in the team. It's a completely different setup, Pommy. It's completely different.
Them players you've named, do you know what I mean? They're all best 22, all integral to our system, do you know what I mean? And I look at the pie side as well for this week. And obviously, do you know what I mean? We haven't touched on him, but I do feel that this is the Pitternet game as well for us versus Cameron. Do you know what I mean? I think that is such a very understated little kind of battle there going on, because obviously last time we played these melts, do you know what I mean? Darcy Cameron, Mason Cox, it was Tom de Koning's probably first couple of games as the solo rock. When you bring Pitternet in, I think he matches up with Cox very well. And I think him and Cameron are very similar, very intentful. So I think that's going to give another string to the bow, because at times we saw in the fourth against Collingwood then, they got out of centre so easy.
And I think one thing too that we can also rely upon with Jack is that if he does go head-to-head in the ruck with Cameron and Cox, obviously, I mean, you want to win the tap and all that, but what I think Jack has over those two is his ability to become another midfielder on the ground. And we saw his clearance numbers spike up. And, Jack's clean around the ball as well. And we saw with his clearance numbers too, it was just similar to what Doherty is, just get the ball on the boot and go when you have to. So I think that is a little advantage he might have over guys like Cox and Cameron when they do go in the ruck head-to-head against each other. So don't be surprised if Jack has a good game this weekend when he goes head-to-head with those guys in the ruck. And I think the Pitternet-Silvani combo works really well. And it worked really well on the weekend. I think it'll work well against Collingwood this Sunday too.
Mate, I love it. Underrated part of Pitternet's work is the blocks he does as well, which last week was usually Kennedy's job. I thought Pitternet, even though we didn't have massive numbers, his physicality around there really did allow Doc, Cripps, Walsh to find a bit of space and use that pill effectively. We go to predictions. Where do you think this game at the end of the day is going to be?
Where do you want margins and who's going to win?
Yeah, go on.
Oh, Carlton are unbeatable and we'll win by 27 points. There you go. It's just I've gone through this game 20,000 times, and I just, barring a disaster, I don't see how we lose this game. Seriously, I don't know how we lose. I don't know how we lose.
I think that they're going to be up for it. I think we're going to see a real vintage fight. I've got Carlton by 13. I know 13 has been the number you're throwing at me all week. So I've got Carlton by 13. You've got inside my head.
If you believe in numerology and numbers, I know there are people out there. I think it's Jasmina and Tori with the crystals and all that sort of stuff. It's the 13th edition of the Richard Pratt Cup, and if we win this weekend, it's our 13th win of the season. So make of that what you will.
Hey, there you are. I mean, I'll tell you what, winning margin, I am getting on that. Do you know what I mean? I'm going to have a token $50 on Carlton by 13 at $46.
Go for it.
I mean,
I'm not stopping you.
I'll retire when it comes through. But...
Yeah, gamble responsibly, of course.
Nah, Pom's all about have 12 beers and just load up. Worry about it when you're sober.
Yeah, great.
But everyone, brilliant. Make sure you go and follow Paolo Paul Seb 05, isn't it?
That's correct. On Twitter. That's correct.
And where else can we find you, Paolo?
Jump a Punch every Tuesday night, occasionally on the Broad Monday night show. Hopefully you get on it this week after a win, Pommy. That'd be nice. What's our record when you do when we do a Monday show after a loss and you're on?
It's 100% win ratio, evidently. I haven't actually verified that, but that has been told to me by 3 people now.
Okay.
So I am a lucky charm.
Okay, there you go.
I'll take it.
There you go. We'll take that. But yeah, Twitter, Jump a Punch on TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Blue Broad, all of it. And away we go. I'm looking forward to a massive Sunday afternoon at the G. It's what we live for, and I cannot wait.
Mate, I can't as well. Make sure you check out 7 o'clock tonight when this goes to air.
Yep.
I'm on Swoop Luke's channel.
Please.
So doing a live debate with him, just letting him know his team's piss in person.
He's gone a little bit. Has he gone a little bit quiet in the last couple of days, or he's not really as confident as he was? I sense fear in their camp upon me. I sense fear.
I haven't taken it as fear. I've taken it as, for me, I think he's it got a bit overzealous last time. And there's a lot of Collingwood fans who were clipping everything I say and turning it into like the race riots of the 80s in the UK. So I think he's a little bit worried about that because every time we say something, it's taken into a whole new realm of Pom's blooming validating murder and stuff like that. And I'm like, I didn't. Right. So, but I'm sure it'll be heated tonight, and I'm sure there'll be some great clips for all you virtue signals out there. You can have hours of fun. You can have hours of fun with me tonight. Thank you very much, Paolo. Make sure you check him out, and see you all Sunday.
Indeed. Go Blues.
Go Blues.